The snow fell without sound. Samuel Bridger sat before a grave marker carved from Montana pine, his breath forming clouds in the frozen air. 3 winters had passed since Sarah died. 3 winters of this ritual. Every year on the same day he rode up to this ridge and sat in silence watching snow cover the earth like a shroud meant to bury memory. It never worked. The mountains around him stood eternal and indifferent. Pine trees creaked under the weight of ice. Wind moved through the valley below, carrying the smell of distance and cold. Sam's hands rested on his knees, weathered and scarred from years of work that kept him too busy to think. But here in front of this grave there was nothing to do but remember. Sarah's voice came to him sometimes in dreams, soft and certain the way she always spoke. She used to tell him that snow carried away the things people wanted to forget, that every winter was a kind of mercy. But 3 seasons had come and gone, and the snow had only buried things deeper. Nothing was carried away. Nothing was forgotten. Sam closed his eyes and saw her face. The way she looked at him that last morning, pale and weak blood seeping through the blankets, no matter how many times he changed them. He had held her hand, felt her fingers grow cold, watched the light fade from eyes that once saw goodness in a man who had done terrible things. She whispered something at the end. 3 words he could not quite hear over the sound of his own heart breaking. He leaned close, desperate to catch them, but her breath stopped before the words finished forming. Whatever she wanted to tell him died with her. For 3 years he had lived with that silence. Sam opened his eyes. The grave marker stood simple and clean. No elaborate carvings, no poetry, just her name and the years that bookended a life cut short. Sarah Bridger, 1851 to 1883. Beloved wife. The word beloved felt like both truth and lie. Sam had loved her with a fierceness that surprised him, a man who thought he had lost the capacity for softness after the war. But he also knew Sarah had secrets, things she never told him, a past she kept locked away in the same way he kept his own. Maybe that was why they fit together, 2 people carrying weight they could not share. Sam reached into his coat and pulled out a small object wrapped in leather. His hands moved slowly, almost reluctant as he unwrapped it. Inside was a bracelet woven from leather strips and decorated with carved bone beads. Apache work, intricate and beautiful, the kind of craftsmanship that took months to complete. He had carried this bracelet for 10 years, a war trophy taken from a dead man, a reminder of the violence he once believed was necessary. The design was distinctive. 2 crossed arrows etched into the centerpiece, a symbol Sam did not understand when he first took it. He only knew it had belonged to someone important. A chief, maybe. A warrior. Someone whose death mattered to the people left behind. Sam turned the bracelet over in his hands. The leather was still supple despite the years. He had kept it hidden, tucked away in a locked drawer where no one would see. Even Sarah never knew about it. He told himself it was because he did not want to explain, did not want to dredge up the past. But the truth was simpler and uglier. He was ashamed, not of killing in war, that was what soldiers did, but of keeping this token, of holding on to a piece of a man whose name he never learned, whose face he barely remembered. It felt like theft, like carrying a piece of someone else's grief. Sam wrapped the bracelet again and put it back in his coat. The motion was practiced, automatic. He had done this every year, brought the bracelet to Sarah's grave as if proximity to her goodness might cleanse it of blood. It never did. He stood slowly, his knees stiff from sitting in the cold. Snow had gathered on his shoulders and hat. He brushed it off without thinking, his eyes still fixed on the grave. 3 years, 3 winters, and he was no closer to peace than the day Sarah died. Sam turned and walked back to his horse, a sturdy gray mare who waited with the patience of an animal used to long silences. He mounted and rode down from the ridge, leaving fresh tracks in the snow that would be gone by morning. The ride back to his ranch took an hour. The land stretched wide and empty, 500 acres of Montana wilderness that bordered the Crow Reservation to the east. Sam had built his life here after the war, after Sarah died, after everything fell apart. He raised cattle, fixed fences, and spoke to no one unless necessity demanded it. People in town called him a hermit. Some said he was crazy, others said he was dangerous. Sam did not care what they said. Words were just noise. Silence was the only thing that felt honest. His ranch came into view as the sun began its descent. The main house stood small and solid, built from logs he had cut himself. A barn sat 50 yards away, weathered but sturdy. Smoke rose from the chimney, evidence of the fire he had left burning that morning. It looked like peace, like a life scrubbed clean of violence. It was a lie. Sam dismounted and led the mare into the barn. He unsaddled her, checked her hooves, gave her grain and water. The work was automatic. His hands moving through motions repeated 10,000 times. His mind was elsewhere. Still on the ridge, still on Sarah's grave, still on the bracelet hidden in his coat. He finished with the horse and stepped back outside. The temperature had dropped further. Night was coming fast, the way it always did in winter. Stars were beginning to appear cold and distant. Sam walked toward the house, his boots crunching through snow. He was halfway across the yard when the mare whinnied behind him. A sharp, alarmed sound that made him stop. Horses did not spook without reason. Sam turned slowly, his hand moving to the revolver on his hip. His eyes scanned the barn, the tree line beyond, the shadows gathering in the corners where firelight did not reach. Nothing moved, but something was wrong. He could feel it in the way the air had changed, in the sudden tension that tightened his shoulders and sharpened his senses. He walked back to the barn, moving quietly despite the snow. The mare was agitated, tossing her head, ears pinned back. Sam approached her, slowly, speaking in a low voice. That was when he saw them. 3 figures huddled in the corner of the barn, half hidden behind stacked hay bales. 2 children and a woman. The woman was on her feet, one arm stretched protectively in front of the children. In her other hand, she held a knife. Sam froze. The woman was Apache. He knew it immediately from her clothing, from the way she stood, from the set of her jaw. She wore a long dress made of deer hide, decorated with beadwork that caught the dim light. Her hair was black and long, braided down her back. Her face was thin and angular, marked by exhaustion and something harder. Determination, or desperation. The children behind her were young. A boy maybe 12 years old and a girl no more than 6. Both of them watched Sam with wide, frightened eyes. No one spoke. Sam's hand stayed on his revolver, but he did not draw. He kept his eyes on the woman's knife, noting the way her grip was steady despite the cold. She knew how to use it. The silence stretched. Wind howled outside. The mare shifted nervously. Finally, the woman spoke. Her voice was rough, like she had not used it in days. "We need horses." Her English was good, accented but clear. Sam wondered where she had learned it. Reservation school, maybe? Or from someone who cared enough to teach. He said nothing, just watched. The woman's eyes narrowed. "I will not beg. We will take the horses and go. You can try to stop us, or you can let us leave." Sam looked at the children again. The boy had moved slightly in front of his sister, his small body tense and ready, protecting her the way the woman protected both of them. The girl was shivering. Her lips had a bluish tint. Frostbite, maybe, or the early stages of hypothermia. Sam made a decision. He lifted his hand slowly away from his revolver and held both hands up, palms open. The universal gesture of peace. "Take them," he said. The woman blinked. Surprise flickered across her face, quickly hidden. "Take the horses," Sam repeated. "Go." She did not move, did not lower the knife. She was waiting for the trick. The trap. Sam understood. Trust was a luxury people like her could not afford. He stepped back toward the barn door, giving them space. "There are 2 horses, the gray mare and a gelding in the back stall. Take both. There is grain in the bin if you need it." Still, the woman hesitated. Then the little girl made a small sound, a whimper, soft and involuntary. The woman's eyes flicked down to her, and Sam saw the moment fear overtook caution. The girl swayed. Her eyes rolled back. She collapsed. The woman dropped the knife and caught her before she hit the ground. The boy moved instantly, his hands reaching for his sister, his voice breaking as he said her name. "Kimmy!" Sam did not think. He crossed the space between them in 3 strides and knelt beside the fallen child. The woman pulled Kimmy closer, shielding her, but Sam held up his hands again. "Let me see her." The woman's eyes were wild. "Do not touch her." "She is burning up," Sam said quietly. "Fever. Infection probably. She will die if you take her out in this cold." The words hit like a fist. The woman's face went pale. She looked down at her daughter, at the small, unconscious face, and something inside her cracked. Sam spoke again, softer this time. "Bring her inside. I have medicine. I can help." The woman's jaw tightened. "Why?" "Because I do not want a dead child on my land." It was not kindness. It was not mercy. It was the truth, stripped bare. And maybe that was why the woman believed him. She looked at her son. The boy met her eyes and gave a small nod. Together they lifted Kimmy. The woman carried her daughter while the boy stayed close, his hand on a knife tucked into his belt. Sam led them out of the barn and across the yard to the house. Inside, the fire was still burning. The room was warm, almost stifling after the cold outside. Sam pointed to his bed in the corner. "Put her there." The woman laid Kimmy down gently, brushing hair back from her forehead. The girl's skin was flushed red, her breathing shallow and fast. Sam could see the swelling on her left hand. Infected cut, maybe a few days old. He moved to the stove and began heating water, his movements efficient. He pulled a tin box from a shelf and opened it, revealing a collection of dried herbs, bandages, and a few glass bottles. The woman watched him with suspicion and something that might have been hope. Sam worked without speaking. He soaked cloth in warm water and placed it on Kimmy's forehead. He cleaned the infected wound on her hand, applied a poultice made from yarrow and sage, and wrapped it in clean linen. He mixed a bitter tea from willow bark and honey, then carefully tipped it into the girl's mouth, one small sip at a time. The boy hovered nearby, his eyes tracking every movement. The woman stood at the foot of the bed, her hands clenched into fists. When Sam finished, he stepped back. "She needs rest. The fever should break by morning if the infection does not spread." The woman swallowed hard. "And if it does spread?" Sam met her eyes. "Then we will deal with it." The weight of that "we" hung in the air, a commitment neither of them had agreed to. The woman looked at her children, at Kimmy, lying pale and small in a stranger's bed, at her son, Dakota, who had not taken his hand off his knife. She looked back at Sam. "My name is Ayanna." Sam nodded once. "Sam." No last names, no explanations. Just 2 people standing in a small cabin while a child fought for her life. Sam gestured to the pot on the stove. "There is food. Eat." Ayanna hesitated, then nodded. She moved to the stove and ladled stew into 2 bowls, handing one to Dakota. They ate in silence, sitting on the floor near Kimmy's bed. Sam gave them his bed without question and took a blanket to the floor near the fire, his rifle across his knees. Outside, the storm that had been building all day finally broke. Wind screamed against the cabin walls. Snow fell in sheets, erasing the world beyond the windows. Inside, 3 strangers breathed in the warmth of firelight, a temporary truce born of necessity. Sleep eluded him. He sat with his back against the wall, his eyes on the door, his mind racing through possibilities. Who were they running from? Why did they need horses so desperately? And why did looking at Ayanna make something in his chest tighten with a feeling he could not name? He glanced at Kimmy. The girl's breathing had evened out slightly, a good sign. Ayanna sat beside her daughter, one hand resting on Kimmy's forehead. She was not sleeping either. Her eyes were open, fixed on something Sam could not see. He wondered what she was thinking. What kind of desperation drove a woman to risk her children's lives in a winter storm? What kind of danger was bad enough that hypothermia seemed like the safer option? Sam did not ask. Questions built connections, and connections led to entanglements. He had learned that lesson too many times. But as the night deepened and the storm raged, Sam found himself watching Ayanna's face in the firelight. There was something familiar about her. Not her features, but the expression, the way she held herself, the quiet strength wrapped around barely hidden fear. Sarah had looked like that sometimes, in the early days of their marriage when she thought he was not watching. A woman carrying weight she refused to share. Sam looked away. Thinking about Sarah led nowhere good. The hours passed slowly. Kimmy's fever remained high. Ayanna changed the cloth on her daughter's forehead every few minutes, her movements gentle and practiced. Dakota fell asleep sitting up, his head tilted against the wall, his hand still near his knife. Dawn came gray and cold. The storm had not broken. If anything, it had grown worse. Sam stood and stretched his body stiff from a night on the floor. He moved to the stove and started coffee, the smell sharp and grounding. Ayanna looked up at him, her eyes shadowed with exhaustion. "She is still burning," Ayanna said quietly. Sam crossed to the bed and placed his hand on Kimmy's forehead. The girl was indeed still feverish, but no worse than the night before. That was something. "It takes time," he said. Ayanna nodded, but he could see she did not believe him. She had seen too many children die of fever. Hope was a luxury she had learned not to afford. Sam poured coffee and handed her a cup. She took it with both hands, letting the warmth seep into her fingers. "Thank you," she said. The words were simple, but the weight behind them was not. Sam nodded. "You should rest. I will watch her." Ayanna shook her head. "I cannot." Sam understood. He had sat vigil beside Sarah's bed in the same way, unable to sleep, unable to look away, as if sheer force of will could keep death at bay. Dakota woke an hour later. He looked at his sister first, then at his mother, then at Sam. His expression was guarded but less hostile than the night before. Sam made breakfast, cornmeal porridge and dried venison, plain food but hot and filling. They ate in silence, the only sounds the crackle of fire and the howl of wind. It was Dakota who finally spoke. "How long has the storm been like this?" Sam glanced at the window. "Started last night. Could last 3 days. Could last a week." Dakota's jaw tightened. Sam saw the boy's eyes flick to his mother, saw the silent communication pass between them. They were trapped here, and that terrified them more than the storm. Sam did not press. He cleared the dishes and busied himself with small tasks, stoking the fire, checking the windows, sharpening his knife, anything to give them space. But he was aware of every movement they made, every whispered word between mother and son, every glance toward the door. They were waiting for something, or running from it. By midday, Kimmy's fever began to break. Her breathing deepened. Her skin grew less flushed. When she opened her eyes and whispered, "Mama," Ayanna's face crumpled with relief. Sam watched from across the room, something loosening in his chest. Ayanna held her daughter, murmuring soft words in Apache. Dakota moved closer, his hand on his sister's arm. For a moment, they were just a family. Not fugitives, not strangers. Just a mother and her children grateful to still be together. Sam turned away, giving them privacy. He moved to the window and looked out at the storm. Snow fell in thick curtains. Visibility was near zero. Nothing could move in this. No one could travel. They were safe. For now. That evening, as Kimmy slept peacefully and Dakota dozed in a chair, Ayanna finally spoke to Sam. "You know medicine," she said. "Apache medicine." It was not a question. Sam kept his eyes on the fire. "I learned some things. A long time ago." "From who?" Sam hesitated. This was dangerous territory, but the truth felt less risky than a lie. "My wife. She worked on a reservation for a few years, before we married." Ayanna was quiet for a long moment. "Your wife. She is not here. She died 3 years ago." "I am sorry." Sam nodded. The words were automatic. People always said they were sorry. It never helped. But Ayanna seemed to mean it. There was understanding in her voice, the kind that came from personal loss. "My husband also died," she said quietly. Sam looked at her. "I am sorry." She gave a small, bitter smile. "Now we are even." The moment should have been awkward. Two strangers trading condolences over dead spouses. But instead it felt like a kind of honesty, a shared recognition of grief. They sat in silence after that. Not uncomfortable, just quiet. That night Sam took the floor again, but this time Ayanna did not protest. She slept beside Kimmy, one arm draped protectively over her daughter. Dakota curled up at the foot of the bed, still wary but exhausted enough to finally rest. Sam lay awake, staring at the ceiling. He thought about Sarah, about the secret she kept, about the way she used to hum Apache songs while she cooked. He thought about the bracelet hidden in his coat, about the man he had killed to get it. And he thought about Ayanna, about the fear in her eyes when she talked about leaving, about the way she had looked at him when he said, "We will deal with it." Sam did not know these people, did not know their story, but he knew desperation when he saw it. And against every instinct, against every lesson learned from years of isolation, he found himself caring whether they lived or died. That was a mistake. Caring led to pain. Attachment led to loss. But the decision was already made. He had opened his door. He had let them in. Now he would have to live with whatever came next. The second day passed much like the first. The storm continued. Kimmy grew stronger. Ayanna began to relax just slightly. Dakota asked Sam questions about the ranch, about the cattle, about how to survive in Montana winter. Sam answered with more patience than he expected from himself. On the third day the storm finally eased. The wind died down. Snow still fell, but lighter, gentler. And that was when Sam saw them. 2 riders moving slowly through the trees at the edge of his property. Too far to see clearly, but close enough to be a threat. Sam grabbed his rifle and moved to the window. Ayanna saw his face and went still. "What is it?" "Riders. 2 of them." Ayanna's face went white. She moved to the window, looked out, and her whole body tensed. "They found us." Sam looked at her. "Who?" But before she could answer, one of the riders moved closer. Close enough that Sam could see the rifle slung across his saddle. Close enough to be a problem. Sam made a decision. He stepped outside into the snow rifle in hand. He did not aim it. Not yet. But the message was clear. The rider stopped. He was a big man, broad-shouldered, with a face Sam did not recognize. He raised one hand in a gesture that might have been peace or mockery. "You seen any Apache come through here?" the man called out. Sam's voice was flat. "No." The rider's eyes narrowed. "You sure about that?" "I am sure I do not see well in storms. I am also sure I do not like strangers on my land." The rider smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "Fair enough, but if you do see anyone, you let us know. There is a reward." Sam did not respond. The rider stared at him for a long moment, then turned his horse and rode back into the trees. His companion followed. Sam waited until they were out of sight, then went back inside. Ayanna was standing in the middle of the room, her face a mask of fear and fury. "You should have given us up," she said. Sam set his rifle down. "No. They will come back. Probably. Why did you lie for us?" Sam looked at her. Really looked. At the fear. At the exhaustion. At the fierce, protective love that made her willing to die rather than surrender her children. He thought about Sarah. About the way she used to look at him when she thought he was not paying attention. Like she saw something in him he did not see in himself. "Because I do not like men with guns telling me what to do on my own land," Sam said. It was not the whole truth, but it was enough. Ayanna stared at him for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. That night Sam told Ayanna she could stay until the weather cleared, until Kimmy was strong enough to travel, until it was safe. Ayanna accepted, but both of them knew safety was a relative thing, and time was running out. The next 2 days were strange. Domestic in a way Sam had not experienced since Sarah died. Ayanna cooked. Dakota helped Sam with chores. Kimmy drew pictures with charcoal on scraps of wood. It almost felt normal, like a family. But the rifles stayed loaded, the door stayed barred at night, and no one spoke about what would happen when the weather broke. On the 5th day, Dakota made a mistake. He was playing with Kimmy near the fireplace, trying to make her laugh. He reached for a toy he had carved from wood, and in doing so knocked over a small wooden box sitting on the shelf. The box fell. The lid popped open, and out spilled Sam's secrets. Letters from Sarah, a photograph, and the Apache bracelet. Dakota picked up the bracelet curious. Kimmy reached for it, fascinated by the beadwork. But Ayanna went perfectly still. She crossed the room in 3 strides and took the bracelet from Dakota's hands. She held it up to the light, her face draining of color. Sam felt his stomach drop. Ayanna turned to him slowly. Her voice was very quiet, very controlled. "Where did you get this?" Sam could not lie. Not now. Not about this. It was a long time ago. "Where did you get this?" Sam met her eyes. "From a man I killed. During the war." Ayanna's hands started to shake. "This bracelet belonged to my father, Chief Nietzsche of the Chiricahua Apache." The room went silent. Even the fire seemed to stop crackling. Sam felt the world tilt. "Your father. He was killed in 1876 by cavalry scouts, a man wearing a brown leather coat, a man with a scar on his right wrist." Ayanna's eyes dropped to Sam's wrist, to the scar clearly visible there. Sam did not move, did not breathe. Ayanna's face twisted with rage and grief. "You!" Sam could have denied it, could have lied, but he was tired of lies, tired of running from the past. "Yes." The word hung in the air like a gunshot. Ayanna stepped back, the bracelet clutched in her fist. Dakota moved between her and Sam, his hand on his knife. Kimmy started crying, not understanding but sensing danger. "Get out," Ayanna said. Her voice shook. "Get out of your own house, or I swear to God I will kill you where you stand." Sam looked at her, at the woman who had just begun to trust him, who had let her children laugh in his home, who had started to believe she might be safe, and he had destroyed it all by simply existing. He picked up his coat, his rifle. He did not argue, did not defend himself. He had killed her father. There was no defense for that. Sam walked to the door. He paused with his hand on the latch. "I did not know," he said quietly. "If I had known you were his daughter, I would have—" He stopped. "Would have what not killed Chief Nietzsche." That was a lie. In that moment, in that battle, he would have done the same thing. Would have given the bracelet back too late for that. Would have never opened his door. Maybe. "I am sorry," Sam said. He opened the door and stepped out into the cold. Behind him he heard Ayanna's voice, raw with pain and fury. "You do not get to be sorry. You do not get to be forgiven. You took my father from me. You took everything." Sam did not turn around. He walked into the snow, into the gathering dark, away from the warmth he had briefly allowed himself to feel. The door slammed shut behind him. And for the second time in his life, Sam understood what it meant to be truly alone. He walked to the barn, made a cold camp in the hayloft, and sat with his rifle and his guilt. Inside the house, Ayanna held her children and cried for the first time in 10 years. She cried for her father, for her lost childhood, for the cruel irony of finding safety in the arms of the man who had destroyed her family. Dakota held his mother and said nothing. Kimmy asked why everyone was sad. Ayanna could not answer. She looked at the bracelet, at the 2 crossed arrows her father used to trace with his finger while telling her stories about honor and courage and doing what was right even when it cost everything. And she wondered if her father had felt this torn when he made his last stand, if he had been as conflicted as she was now. Because the man who killed her father had also saved her daughter's life. The man who took everything from her had given her shelter when she had nowhere else to go. The man she should hate was the same man who looked at her children with kindness instead of contempt. It was too much, too complicated, too painful. Ayanna set the bracelet down on the table. She could not look at it, could not bear the weight of what it represented. Outside, snow began to fall again, soft and silent, covering the tracks, burying the past. But this time the snow did not bring mercy, it only brought the cold. The night passed in fragments. Sam sat in the barn loft, his back against rough wood, his rifle across his knees. Sleep came in brief, uneasy waves. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Chief Naiche's face, not as it had been in battle, fierce and defiant, but as it had been in death. The way the light faded from his eyes, the way blood pooled in the Montana dirt. Sam had killed many men during the Indian Wars. He told himself it was duty, orders, survival. But he remembered Naiche differently than the others, because Naiche had not died immediately. The chief had lived long enough to speak. Sam had leaned close, not out of compassion but curiosity. What did a dying man say when he knew the end had come? Naiche's words had been in Apache mostly. Sam understood only fragments, but 3 words had been in English, clear and deliberate. "Protect my daughter." Sam had not understood. He thought it was delirium, a father's last prayer to gods who could not hear. He had taken the bracelet and walked away, left the body for the burial detail, filed his report, moved on to the next battle, the next mission, the next kill. He never thought about Naiche again, not until tonight. Now, sitting in the cold dark of his barn, Sam understood what he had done. He had not just killed a warrior. He had killed Ayanna's father, had orphaned her, had set in motion whatever chain of suffering led her to his door 15 years later. The cruelty of it was almost poetic. Sam pressed his palms against his eyes. His chest felt hollow, not with regret exactly. Regret implied he would have done things differently if given the chance, but he would not have. In that moment on that battlefield, he had made the only choice that kept him alive. That was the truth, cold and irredeemable. He had killed to survive, and Ayanna's father had died because of it. No apology could change that. No act of kindness could balance the scales. Inside the house, Ayanna did not sleep either. She sat in Sam's chair, the bracelet resting in her palm. Her children slept in the bed behind her. Dakota's arm wrapped protectively around Kimi, both of them exhausted by emotion they did not fully understand. Ayanna studied the bracelet in the firelight. She had not seen it in 15 years. Her father had worn it every day of her childhood. She remembered the way it looked on his wrist, the way he would touch it when he was thinking, the way he had given it to her mother the day they were married, then taken it back with a promise. "When you have a daughter," he had said, "I will give this to her, and she will know she comes from strength." But Ayanna never received the bracelet, because her father died before she was old enough to understand what marriage meant, before she was old enough to understand what war meant. She had been 21 years old when the soldiers came, 21 when her father rode out with 40 warriors to defend their land, 21 when only 3 men came back carrying stories of betrayal and blood. Her father's body had never been returned. The soldiers said it was buried in a mass grave, unmarked, forgotten. But Ayanna had known better. White men took trophies, scalps, weapons, jewelry. She had known someone somewhere carried a piece of her father. She just never thought she would meet that person, never thought she would owe him her daughter's life. The irony was suffocating. Ayanna set the bracelet on the table. She could not look at it anymore. Every glance brought fresh pain. But beneath the pain, something else stirred. Something complicated and unwelcome. Because the man who killed her father was not the monster she had imagined all these years. He was just a man, scarred and haunted, living alone because the weight of his past had become too heavy to share. She recognized that, because she carried the same weight. Dawn came gray and quiet. Sam descended from the loft and approached the house. He did not knock, just stood outside the door waiting. After a long moment, the door opened. Ayanna stood in the threshold. Her face was composed, empty of the rage from the night before. But the emptiness was worse. It meant she had moved past anger into something colder. "You will tell me everything," she said, "and then I will decide if I let you live." Sam nodded. "All right." They sat at opposite ends of the table. The bracelet lay between them like a third presence. Dakota and Kimi remained in bed, awake but silent, listening. Sam began. He told her about the spring of 1876. about the orders to pursue Apache warriors who had left the reservation, about the scout who led them into the mountains, about the ambush that killed 2 soldiers before they even knew they were under attack. He told her about the battle, how it lasted less than an hour but felt like days, how the Apache fought with precision and courage, how his commanding officer ordered them to take no prisoners. He told her about Nietzsche, how the chief had fought at the rear covering his warriors' retreat, how Sam had been separated from his unit alone and cornered, how Nietzsche could have killed him but hesitated. Just a moment, just long enough. Sam had not hesitated. His voice was steady, factual. He did not try to justify, did not try to soften. I shot him in the chest. He went down. I thought he was dead, but when I got close he was still breathing. He looked at me. Not with hate, just sadness. Ayana's hands clenched. He said something in Apache. I did not understand most of it, but then he said 3 words in English. Protect my daughter. And then he said another word. A name, I think. It sounded like Sarah. Ayana's head snapped up. What? Sam met her eyes. He said Sarah. I am sure of it. Ayana's face went pale. That is not possible. Did you know someone named Sarah? Ayana stood abruptly. She paced to the window, her breath coming fast. Yes, she said finally. I knew Sarah. She turned back to Sam, her eyes blazing. After my father died, I had nowhere to go. I was 21, old enough to work, but the Apache camps had nothing for me. A missionary teacher named Sarah Whitmore hired me as a translator and teaching assistant. I worked with her for 3 years. It was bad. The teachers beat us for speaking Apache, for practicing our traditions. They said they were saving our souls, but they were killing everything that made us who we were. Sam stayed silent. And then Sarah came. She was young, maybe 20. She had been hired to teach reading and writing, but she was different. She learned our language. She listened when we spoke. She did not try to erase us. Ayana's voice softened. She took special care of me. I think because I had no one. She would sit with me in the evenings and tell me stories, not Bible stories like the other teachers. Real stories, about places she had been, things she had seen. She made me feel like the world was bigger than the reservation, bigger than grief. She taught me to read English, to write, to understand the laws and treaties that white people used to take our land. She said knowledge was the only weapon they could not steal from us. Ayana sat back down. I worked alongside her for 3 years, from 1876 until the summer of 1879. She was not my mother, but she was the closest thing I had. And then one day she was gone. No warning, no goodbye, just a letter left on my bed. Ayana's voice cracked. The letter said she had to leave, that she was in danger, that I should forget her and live my life, that I should not try to find her. Sam leaned forward. When was this? Summer of 1879. Sam felt something cold settle in his stomach. That was the summer I met her. Ayana stared at him. Sam continued. I left the cavalry in 1878, came to Montana to start over. I was working at a lumber camp when she arrived. She said her name was Sarah Whitmore, said she was looking for work, looking for a quiet place to disappear. I did not ask questions. I was trying to disappear too. We got married 6 months later, bought this land, built the house. For 4 years it was good. She was good, the best thing in my life. And then she got sick. At least that is what I thought. Sam's jaw tightened. She started coughing blood, getting weaker. I brought doctors from town. They said it was consumption, said there was nothing to be done. She died in December of 1883. He looked at Ayana. But now I am starting to think she was not sick. I think someone killed her. Ayana's breath caught. Why? Sam stood and walked to a trunk in the corner. He pulled out a wooden box locked. He opened it with a key from his pocket. Inside were Sarah's things, letters, a journal, photographs, and at the bottom a sealed envelope addressed to Ayana. Sam handed it to her. I found this after she died, hidden in her sewing box. I could not bring myself to open it. I did not know who Ayanna was. I thought maybe it was a friend from before we met, someone from her past she had left behind. Ayanna took the envelope with shaking hands. She broke the seal. Inside were 3 items: a letter, a photograph of Sarah and Ayanna together taken at the reservation, and a folded piece of parchment, old and yellowed. Ayanna read the letter first. Her eyes filled with tears. When she finished, she looked up at Sam. Sarah's real name was Sarah Hale. She was the daughter of Winston Hale, Indian Affairs Commissioner. Sam went still. Ayanna continued, her voice hollow. Her father was corrupt. He took bribes from railroad companies. He falsified treaties to give white settlers Apache land. He stole thousands of acres and sold them for profit. Sarah found out when she was 19. She worked in her father's office filing papers. She discovered a real treaty, the original agreement between the United States government and the Chiricahua Apache, signed in 1872. It gave us rights to 50,000 acres in Montana, land that includes this ranch, land that Winston Hale sold to the railroad 5 years later by substituting a fake treaty. Ayanna held up the parchment. This is the real treaty. Sarah stole it. She was going to expose her father, turn him into the authorities. But he found out. He threatened to have her killed if she did not return it. So she ran, changed her name, hid, and eventually she found you. Sam felt the room tilt. She married me to disappear. Yes, but the letter says she grew to love you, that marrying you started as survival but became real. Ayanna's voice hardened, but her father never stopped looking. He finally found her in 1883, sent men to kill her, make it look like sickness. The letter says she knew they were coming. She had weeks to run, but she chose to stay with you, chose to die rather than lead her father's men to me, because she had already sent the treaty to me. And if she ran, they would follow, they would find me, and everything she fought for would be lost. Ayanna looked at Sam with something that might have been pity. She died to protect me, and to protect this treaty, the last evidence that could bring her father down. Sam sank into his chair. His mind reeled. Sarah had not died of consumption. She had been murdered, poisoned, probably, slowly and carefully to avoid suspicion. And he had never known, never suspected. He had buried her thinking she died of natural causes, thinking he had lost her to bad luck and cruel fate. But she had been killed, and the man who ordered it was still alive. Winston Hale, Sam said. His voice was flat, empty. Yes. He killed my wife. Yes. Sam looked at Ayanna, at the daughter of the man he killed, at the woman carrying the legacy of his dead wife. Sarah asked you to do something with that treaty. Ayanna nodded. She wanted me to bring it to the new Indian Affairs Commissioner, to expose her father, to reclaim our land. That is why you are running. Yes. Winston found out I have the treaty. He sent men, hired guns. They have been hunting me for 2 months. I thought if I could get to Fort Benton, if I could reach the territorial marshal, I could finish what Sarah started. But you did not make it. No. The storm trapped us, and now they are closing in. Sam stood. He walked to the window and looked out at the white expanse of his land that was not legally his, land that belonged to the Apache. He turned back to Ayanna. I will help you. Ayanna blinked. What? I will help you get to Fort Benton. I will help you expose Winston Hale. I will help you reclaim your land. Even though it means you lose everything, this ranch is your life. Sam looked at her steadily. This ranch is built on stolen land, on lies, on the bones of your people. If that treaty is real, if this land belongs to the Apache, then I have no right to it. And more than that, his voice dropped, Winston Hale killed Sarah. He took the only good thing I ever had. So yes, I will help you destroy him. Ayanna studied his face, searching for deception, for hidden motive. She found only weary conviction. "Why should I trust you? You killed my father." "You should not trust me, but Sarah did, and she was smarter than both of us." Ayanna was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. "All right, we work together. But when this is over, when Winston is destroyed and the treaty is delivered, you and I are done. I never want to see you again." "Agreed." They shook hands. The gesture felt both formal and futile, a pact between enemies bound by circumstance. Dakota emerged from the bed, his face wary. "Mama, are we safe now?" Ayanna pulled him close. "Not yet, my son, but we are closer." The next 3 days were strange. Sam and Ayanna worked together with cold efficiency. They planned, strategized, prepared for the fight they knew was coming. Sam taught Dakota to shoot, not with enthusiasm but with necessity. The boy learned fast. His hands were steady, his eyes sharp. Ayanna taught Sam words in Apache, basic phrases. She said it was practical. If they needed to communicate in front of Winston's men, a shared language would help. But there was something else beneath the lessons, a tentative bridge forming across the chasm of grief and guilt between them. Kimi drew pictures. She drew the mountains, the cabin, 4 people standing together. When Sam saw the drawing, something in his chest tightened. He said nothing, just set it aside. On the 4th day, old Pete arrived. Pete was Sam's nearest neighbor, an old trapper who lived 10 miles east. He came rarely and always brought news. Today the news was bad. "There are men in town," Pete said, warming his hands by the fire. 20 of them, maybe more. They are asking about Apache, offering money for information." Sam and Ayanna exchanged looks. "Did you tell them anything?" Sam asked. Pete snorted. "I am old, not stupid, but others did. They know an Apache woman and 2 children were seen heading toward the mountains before the storm. They are planning to search every ranch and cabin within 50 miles. "How long do we have?" "A day, maybe 2. Sam nodded. "Thank you, Pete." The old man looked at Ayanna and the children. "You are protecting them?" "Yes." "Why?" Sam did not answer. Pete shrugged. "Your business. But those men are not just hired guns. I heard one of them mention Winston Hale's name." Ayanna's face went white. "Winston Hale is here in Montana. Arrived 3 days ago, staying at the hotel in town. Says he is retired, just visiting the territory. But everyone knows when powerful men come to small towns, it is never for pleasure." After Pete left, Sam and Ayanna made a decision. They could not run. The children were too young for a hard journey in winter, and Winston's men would hunt them down eventually. They could not hide. The ranch was too obvious, too isolated, so they would go on the offensive. "We need proof," Ayanna said. "The treaty alone might not be enough. We need evidence that Winston ordered Sarah's death, that he falsified documents, that he is corrupt." "That evidence will be in his possession," Sam said, "in his room at the hotel." "Then we take it." Sam looked at her. "That is insane. Do you have a better idea?" He did not. That night they left Dakota and Kimi with Pete hidden at his cabin. The old man promised to protect them with his life if necessary. Sam and Ayanna rode through the dark toward town. The hotel was small, 2 stories, a dozen rooms. Winston would have taken the best one. Top floor, corner room with a view. They tied their horses behind the livery and approached on foot. The town was quiet. Most people asleep. A few late drinkers stumbled from the saloon, too drunk to notice 2 shadows moving between buildings. Sam and Ayanna reached the hotel. A back entrance led to the kitchen. Unlocked. They slipped inside. The stairs creaked under their weight. Sam winced with each step, expecting shouts, alarms. But none came. The hallway was dark. 4 doors. 3 were silent. One had light seeping beneath it. Sam pointed. Ayanna nodded. They approached carefully. Sam pressed his ear to the door. He heard nothing. No voices. No movement. He tried the handle. Locked. Ayanna pulled a thin piece of wire from her coat. She worked the lock with practiced ease. Sam raised an eyebrow. "Sarah taught me many things," Ayanna whispered. The lock clicked. The door opened. The room was empty, but it had been recently occupied. Papers covered the desk. A half-finished glass of whiskey sat beside them. Cigar smoke still hung in the air. Sam and Ayanna moved quickly. They rifled through the papers. Ledgers, telegrams, letters. And then Ayanna found it. A telegram dated December 1883, addressed to a man named Garrett Finch. Target confirmed in Montana Territory. Ranch near Flatridge. Complete the task. Make it look natural. Below that, another telegram from a month later. Task completed. No complications. Ayanna's hands shook as she read. This is it. Proof he ordered Sarah's murder. Sam looked over her shoulder. His jaw clenched. More papers, more evidence, falsified treaties, bribe receipts, communications with railroad executives, enough to hang Winston Hale twice over. They gathered everything, stuffed it into a leather satchel Ayanna had brought, and then they heard footsteps in the hall. Sam and Ayanna froze. The footsteps stopped outside the door. A key turned in the lock. Winston Hale stepped inside. He was tall, silver-haired, impeccably dressed even at this late hour. His face was lined with age, but his eyes were sharp. He looked at Sam and Ayanna without surprise. "I have been expecting you," he said calmly. He closed the door behind him. In his hand was a revolver. "Sam Bridger, my daughter's husband, and Ayanna, the girl Sarah loved like a sister." His voice was smooth, cultured, the voice of a man used to power. "How long have you known?" Sam asked. "About you, Sam. Since the day Sarah died. She left me a letter, a final request. She begged me not to harm you. Said you were a good man who deserved a chance at peace." Winston's smile was cold. "I honored her wish. For 3 years I let you live. But now you are interfering with my business, sheltering my enemies, that I cannot allow." He turned to Ayanna. "And you, Nietzsche's daughter. I thought you had died in the reservation camps. So many did after all. But here you are, alive, and holding my daughter's stolen property." "It is not stolen," Ayanna said. "It is evidence of your crimes." "Semantics." Winston raised the gun. Sam moved without thinking. He shoved Ayanna toward the window just as Winston fired. The bullet tore through Sam's shoulder. Pain exploded white-hot. He staggered but did not fall. Ayanna crashed through the window. Glass shattered. She landed on the roof of the porch below, rolling to absorb the impact. Sam turned and dove after her. 2 more shots. One grazed his leg. The other missed. He hit the porch roof hard. Ayanna grabbed his good arm and pulled him to the edge. They dropped to the street. Behind them Winston appeared in the broken window. "Burn it!" he shouted to someone below. "Burn the hotel! Kill them both!" Men appeared from the shadows. Garrett Finch's hired guns. Sam and Ayanna ran. They made it to the alley behind the livery. Sam's shoulder was bleeding heavily. His vision swam. Ayanna pulled him into a narrow space between buildings, a drainage culvert half filled with snow. They crawled through it, emerging near the frozen creek that ran behind the town. Behind them, fire erupted. The hotel went up in flames with shocking speed. Someone had doused it in kerosene. Winston was burning the evidence, and trying to burn them with it. Sam collapsed on the creek bank. Blood soaked his shirt. Ayanna tore strips from her coat and pressed them against his wound. "Stay with me," she said. "The papers." Sam gasped. Ayanna held up the satchel. "I have them." Sam nodded. Then his eyes closed. Ayanna looked at the burning town, at the men searching the streets, at the blood pooling in the snow beneath Sam. She had 2 choices: leave him and run, save herself and the evidence, or stay, try to save the man who killed her father, the man who was now bleeding to death because he had pushed her out of the way of a bullet. Ayanna made her choice. She lifted Sam as best she could. He was heavy, unconscious, but she dragged him into the creek bed into the shadows beneath a stone bridge. She held pressure on his wound, whispered words in Apache, prayers to gods she had stopped believing in years ago, and she waited for dawn. Above them the hotel burned. Winston Hale stood in the street watching it collapse. His face was expressionless. Garrett Finch approached. "Sir, we lost them in the chaos, but they could not have gone far. The man is wounded." "Then find them," Winston said quietly, "and this time make sure they stay dead." Finch nodded and dispersed his men. Winston remained watching the flames. He thought about Sarah, about the daughter who had defied him, who had chosen conscience over family. He thought about how much Ayanna looked like her, the same fierce determination, the same stubborn refusal to bend, and he felt nothing, not regret, not grief, just cold calculation. They had to die, both of them, because if that treaty reached the territorial marshal, everything he had built would crumble. Winston turned and walked back to his temporary quarters. He had a plan to make, and by tomorrow this would all be over. Beneath the bridge, Ayanna held Sam and listened to his labored breathing. She looked at the satchel of evidence, at the treaty her father had fought for, that Sarah had died for, and she made a promise. She would finish this, no matter what it cost, for her father, for Sarah, for her children, and maybe impossibly for the broken man bleeding in her arms, the man who had taken everything from her, the man who had just saved her life. The night deepened. The fire raged, and two people who should have been enemies clung to each other in the dark, bound by blood and secrets, and a shared enemy neither could defeat alone. The cold woke Sam, not the cold of winter air, but the cold of blood loss, the kind that started in the extremities and worked inward, claiming inches of warmth until nothing remained but a shivering core fighting to stay alive. He opened his eyes to darkness broken only by distant firelight. The hotel still burned, casting orange reflections on the underside of the stone bridge where they hid. Smoke drifted across the frozen creek, acrid and choking. Ayanna knelt beside him, her hands pressed against his shoulder. Her face was streaked with soot and blood. His blood. She had torn her coat into strips and bound his wounds as best she could, but the makeshift bandages were already soaked through. "You are awake," she said quietly. Sam tried to sit up. Pain lanced through his shoulder and he gasped, falling back. "Do not move," Ayanna commanded. "The bullet went through. Clean exit. But you lost blood. Too much." Sam's vision swam. He forced himself to focus. "The papers." Ayanna held up the leather satchel still clutched in her other hand. "Safe. Winston. Alive. Searching for us." Sam closed his eyes. He had failed. They had gotten the evidence but walked straight into Winston's trap. And now he was wounded, useless, a liability that would get them both killed. "Leave me," he said. Ayanna's eyes flashed. "No. I am slowing you down. Take the papers. Get to the marshal. Finish this." I said no. "Ayanna, listen to reason. Your children need you. The Apache need that treaty. I am already dead. I just have not stopped breathing yet." Ayanna leaned close, her face inches from his. When she spoke, her voice was low and fierce. "You do not get to decide when you die. Not after what you did." "What I did, I got you shot at. I got us trapped. You pushed me out of the way of a bullet. You took that shot for me." Sam met her eyes. So you saved my life. The daughter of the man you killed. That means something." "It means I was trying to balance the scales. It does not make us even." "No," Ayanna agreed. "It does not. But it means I do not leave you to die under a bridge like an animal. Sarah would never forgive me, and I would never forgive myself." She pulled another strip of cloth from her ruined coat and wrapped it tighter around his shoulder. Sam hissed in pain but did not protest. Above them, voices called out. Finch's men searching the creek banks. Getting closer. Ayanna pressed a hand over Sam's mouth, signaling silence. They both went still. Footsteps crunched through snow directly overhead. A man's voice, rough and impatient. They could not have gone far. Not with him bleeding like that. Check downstream. The footsteps moved away. Ayanna waited a full minute before removing her hand. When she did, Sam whispered, "We cannot stay here." "I know. Can you get me to the horses?" Ayanna assessed him with a critical eye. He was pale, shaking, but conscious. That was something. "If you can walk, I can get us there." Sam nodded. Ayanna helped him to his feet. The world tilted violently. He grabbed the bridge support to steady himself, breathing hard. "Ready?" Ayanna asked. "No, but we do not have a choice." They moved through the shadows like ghosts. Sam leaned heavily on Ayanna, each step an act of will. His shoulder screamed, his leg grazed by Winston's second bullet throbbed with each impact, but he kept moving. The livery stable was 200 yards away. It might as well have been 200 miles. They made it 50 yards before Sam's legs gave out. He collapsed against a wooden fence, gasping. Ayanna caught him. "We have to keep going." "I know, just give me a moment." They did not have a moment. Shouts erupted behind them. Someone had found blood in the snow, the trail they had left. There, by the fence. Ayanna pulled Sam forward with strength born of desperation. He forced his legs to work to carry him just a little farther. The stable loomed ahead. Their horses were inside exactly where they had left them. A gunshot cracked. The fence post beside Sam's head exploded into splinters. Ayanna shoved him through the stable door and slammed it shut behind them. She threw the bolt just as bodies slammed against it from outside. "Get the horses!" she shouted. Sam stumbled to the stalls. His hands shook as he fumbled with the bridles. The horses sensed danger and stamped nervously. Outside men were yelling, organizing. Someone ran for an axe. Ayanna appeared beside Sam. Together they led the horses to the back door of the stable. It opened onto an alley that ran toward the edge of town. The front door began to splinter under axe blows. Sam mounted his horse with Ayanna's help. Every movement was agony. He swayed in the saddle, vision graying at the edges. Ayanna mounted her own horse and grabbed Sam's reins. "Hold on!" She kicked her horse into a gallop. Sam's horse followed. They burst from the alley into the open ground beyond town. Behind them, Finch's men scrambled for their own mounts. The chase was on. Ayanna pushed the horses hard. Too hard for safety, but safety was a luxury they could not afford. The terrain was treacherous. Frozen ground hidden beneath snow, rocks and roots waiting to snap a horse's leg. But she knew this land, had traveled it on her desperate flight to Sam's ranch weeks ago. She knew which paths were solid and which were deadly. She led them east toward the foothills, toward Pete's cabin where her children waited. Sam clung to his saddle with fading strength. The world had become a blur of white and black, snow and night. He focused on the rhythm of hoofbeats, on the cold air burning his lungs, on anything except the fire in his shoulder and the creeping numbness in his fingers. Behind them their pursuers gained ground. Fresh horses, uninjured riders. The gap closed with every mile. A bullet whined past Sam's ear. "Faster!" he managed to shout. "The horses cannot take more," Ayanna called back. Another shot. This one struck Sam's horse in the hindquarters. The animal screamed and stumbled. Sam flew forward, hitting the ground hard. The impact drove the air from his lungs. His vision went white with pain. Ayanna wheeled her horse around. She saw Sam lying motionless in the snow, saw the riders closing in less than 100 yards behind. She made a choice. She dismounted and ran to Sam. He was conscious barely. She pulled him to his feet and half-carried, half-dragged him toward a cluster of rocks at the base of a steep hillside. They reached the rocks just as the first rider crested the rise behind them. Ayanna propped Sam against a boulder and pulled her knife. It was all she had. No gun, no rifle, just a blade, and the desperate courage of a mother who knew her children were less than 5 miles away. The riders surrounded them. 8 men, all armed, all paid to kill. Garrett Finch dismounted and walked forward. He was a large man, thick through the chest, with a face that had seen too many bar fights and not enough conscience. "Well now," he said, "looks like your luck ran out." Ayanna said nothing, just shifted her weight ready to fight. Finch laughed. "You going to fight all 8 of us with a knife, lady? I almost admire the spirit." Almost, Sam croaked from behind her, is not enough. Finch's smile faded. You should have died in that hotel Bridger. Would have saved everyone trouble. Story of my life, Sam said. Never could do things the easy way. Finch drew his revolver. Enough talk. Hale wants you dead, and I always deliver. He raised the gun. A rifle shot cracked across the frozen landscape. Finch jerked and looked down at the red stain spreading across his chest. His expression was almost comical. Surprise and indignation that someone had dared shoot him. He fell. The other riders spun searching for the shooter. Another shot. A second man dropped. And then old Pete emerged from the tree line, his ancient rifle smoking. Behind him came Dakota holding Sam's hunting rifle with steady hands. Thought you might need help, Pete said calmly. He worked the bolt on his rifle and chambered another round. The remaining 6 riders looked at each other. They were hired guns, not soldiers. They had signed on for easy money, not a firefight against an old man and a boy who shot like veterans. One of them spurred his horse and rode hard in the opposite direction. Then another. Then all of them. They scattered like leaves before wind, abandoning their dead and their mission in equal measure. Pete lowered his rifle and walked to Ayanna and Sam. Dakota ran to his mother, wrapping his arms around her. Mama, you are alive. Ayanna held her son tight, tears streaming down her face. I am. We are. Pete knelt beside Sam. You look terrible. Feel worse, Sam managed. Can you ride? Not well, but I can try. Good enough. Between them, Pete and Ayanna got Sam onto Pete's horse. Dakota rode with Ayanna on the remaining mount. They made the journey to Pete's cabin in silence. Every step was precarious. Sam drifted in and out of consciousness, held upright only by Pete's iron grip. When they finally reached the cabin, Kimmy ran out to meet them. She stopped when she saw Sam, her small face going pale. Is he dying? She asked. Not if I can help it, Pete said. They carried Sam inside and laid him on Pete's bed. The old trapper had seen enough wounds in his life to know what needed to be done. He cleaned the injuries, properly stitched what needed stitching, and bandaged everything with practiced efficiency. Sam screamed once when Pete poured whiskey directly into the shoulder wound. Then he passed out. He will live, Pete announced, if infection does not set in, and if he rests. Ayanna sank into a chair, exhausted beyond measure. Dakota stood beside her, one hand on her shoulder. Kimmy climbed into her lap and buried her face against her mother's chest. For the first time in hours they were safe. But safety, they all knew, was temporary. Winston Hale was still out there, still hunting, and he would not stop until they were all dead. Sam woke to gray daylight filtering through a cabin window he did not recognize. His body felt like it had been trampled by horses, which he reflected was not far from the truth. He turned his head and saw Pete sitting in a chair smoking a pipe. "Welcome back," the old man said. "How long?" 2 days. You have been out for 2 days. Fever broke this morning." Sam tried to sit up. His shoulder protested violently. He settled for propping himself on his good elbow. "Ayanna, outside with the children, teaching the boy to set snares." Sam nodded. That sounded right. Ayanna would not waste time. She would prepare. Plan. Keep moving forward, because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant feeling, and feeling meant breaking. He understood that better than anyone. Pete puffed on his pipe. "She sat with you the whole first night, would not leave your side. Dakota had to bring her food." Why do you think?" Sam had no answer. Pete stood and stretched. "You two have something complicated going on. I will not ask about it. But I will say this. That woman would have died to save you, and you would have died to save her. So maybe you should stop pretending you are strangers bound by circumstance and admit you are something more." "I killed her father." Pete raised an eyebrow. "Well, that does complicate things. It makes things impossible. Maybe. Or maybe it makes forgiveness mean something real. Easy to forgive small slights. Harder to forgive the death of someone you love. That is the kind of forgiveness that changes people." Sam said nothing. Pete moved to the door. "She is out back. You should talk to her." After Pete left, Sam lay still for a long time. His mind churned through everything that had happened. The fire, the chase, the moment Ayanna chose to stay instead of run. She could have left him, should have left him. He was the man who orphaned her, the man whose existence was a living reminder of the worst day of her life. But she stayed. Sam did not understand it, did not think he deserved it, but he was grateful for it in ways he could not articulate. He forced himself to stand. His legs shook but held. He wrapped a blanket around his shoulders and walked outside. The world was bright with snow and sun, painfully bright after 2 days of darkness. He found Ayanna and Dakota near the tree line. She was showing him how to bend saplings into snare triggers. The boy listened intently, his hands mimicking her movements. Kimmy sat nearby building a snow fort. She saw Sam first. "You are awake," she called out. Ayanna turned. Her expression was carefully neutral, but Sam saw relief flicker across her face. She said something to Dakota, then walked to meet Sam. They stood facing each other in the snow. Two people who had been through fire and blood and loss. Two people who should have been enemies, but had somehow become something else. "You should be resting," Ayanna said. "I have been resting for 2 days. Not enough. It will have to be." Ayanna crossed her arms. "Pete says Winston's men are regrouping. He heard from someone in town. They are planning another search. This time they will check every cabin, every ranch. They will find us. Then we cannot be here when they come." "Where do we go?" Sam looked at her. "Fort Benton, like you planned from the start. We take the evidence. We find the territorial marshal. We end this. You are in no condition to travel. I am in no condition to sit here waiting to die either." Ayanna's jaw tightened. "This is foolish. Probably, but it is the only option we have." She wanted to argue. Sam could see it in the set of her shoulders, but she also knew he was right. They could not hide forever. Eventually Winston would find them, and when he did, they would all die. The only way forward was through. "We leave tomorrow morning," Ayanna decided. "Tonight you rest, eat, regain strength." Sam nodded. They stood in awkward silence. So much needed to be said, so much that could not be said. Finally Sam spoke. "Thank you for not leaving me under that bridge." Ayanna met his eyes. "Do not thank me yet. We are not safe. We may never be safe. Still, you had a choice. You chose to stay." "Yes, I did." "Why?" Ayanna looked away toward her children playing in the snow. "Because Sarah loved you, and she loved me. And I think she would want me to save you the way she saved me all those years ago." It was not the whole truth, but it was enough of it to matter. Sam nodded slowly. Sarah had good instincts about people. She did. A pause. Then Ayanna added, "And because you are not the man who killed my father. Not anymore. That man was a soldier following orders. This man is trying to make things right. I can hate the soldier, but I cannot hate you." The words hit Sam like a physical blow. Forgiveness was not something he had expected, not something he thought he deserved, but Ayanna was offering it anyway. Not complete forgiveness, not absolution, just a willingness to see him as more than the worst thing he had ever done. It was more than he had any right to ask for. "I will spend the rest of my life trying to earn that," Sam said quietly. Ayanna's expression softened. "I know." That night they shared a meal around Pete's small table. Venison stew and cornbread, simple food that tasted better than anything Sam could remember. Kimmy talked non-stop, her child's innocence a bright spot in the darkness. She told Sam about the snow fort she was building, about the rabbit tracks she had found, about the star her mother had shown her the night before. Sam listened and smiled and felt something in his chest that he had not felt in years. Peace. Not complete peace, not lasting peace, but a moment of it, a fragment of what life could be if he survived long enough to build something good. After dinner, Dakota approached Sam hesitantly. Can I ask you something? Of course. The boy glanced at his mother, then back to Sam. My father. My real father. Do you know who he was? Sam's chest tightened. He looked at Ayanna. Her face had gone pale. Dakota, she said quietly, this is not the time. I need to know, the boy insisted. Everyone treats me different, like I am broken, like I do not belong. I need to know why. Ayanna stood and walked to her son. She knelt before him, taking his hands in hers. Your father was a cavalry scout. I do not know his name. I never knew. What happened between us was not... It was not my choice. Dakota's eyes widened. Understanding dawned, followed quickly by horror and anger. Someone hurt you. Yes. And I am the result of that. Ayanna gripped his hands tighter. You are my son. That is all you are. Not a reminder of pain, not a mistake. My son. The boy I chose to love every single day. Do you understand? Dakota's eyes filled with tears. But I look like him, whoever he was. You have to see him when you look at me. I see you, Ayanna said fiercely. Only you, brave and strong and good. Everything he was not. She pulled Dakota into her arms. The boy cried against her shoulder. Kimmy, sensing her brother's pain, came over and wrapped her small arms around both of them. Sam turned away, giving them privacy. But he felt the weight of the moment. The courage it took for Ayanna to speak that truth. The strength it took for Dakota to hear it. Later, when the children were asleep, Sam and Ayanna sat by the fire. That was hard, Sam said. It was necessary. He deserved to know. He is a good boy, strong, like his mother. Ayanna smiled faintly. He has had to be strong. We all have. They fell into silence, comfortable now. The kind of quiet that exists between people who have been through something terrible together and survived. Tomorrow we ride for Fort Benton, Ayanna said. 3 days if the weather holds, longer if it does not. We will make it. You sound certain. I am. Because we have to. There is no alternative. Ayanna looked at him. If we die on the way, if Winston catches us, promise me something. What? Promise me you will make sure my children get to the reservation, that they find what is left of my people, that they do not grow up alone. Sam met her eyes. I promise. But we are not going to die. How can you be sure? Because Sarah did not save you just so you could die in the snow, and she did not marry me just so I could fail her one last time. We owe her more than that. Ayanna nodded. Yes, we do. They sat together until the fire burned low. 2 people planning for a future that might never come. 2 people bound by the dead and fighting for the living. And in that moment, beneath the weight of grief and guilt and impossible odds, they were not alone. Morning came cold and clear. Pete gave them supplies, food, ammunition, blankets, everything he could spare. You are not coming with us? Sam asked. No, I am too old and too slow. I would just get you killed, but I will do something more useful. What? I will ride to the territorial marshal. Tell him what is happening. Make sure he knows to expect you. If Winston has men watching the roads, a lone old trapper will not draw attention the way a wounded man and an Apache woman would. It was a good plan. Solid. Thank you, Sam said. Pete clasped his hand. You are a good man, Sam Bridger. Better than you think. Do not die before you figure that out. They left at dawn. Sam on one horse, Ayanna and the children on another. The journey ahead was long and dangerous, but for the first time in years, Sam felt like he was moving towards something instead of running from it. They traveled slowly, avoiding main roads. Sam's wounds still pained him, but he pushed through it. Ayanna kept watch, her eyes scanning constantly for threats. The children were quiet. Even Kimmy seemed to sense that this was no time for games. On the second day they saw smoke on the horizon. A ranch burning. Sam and Ayanna looked at each other. "Winston is destroying everything," Ayanna said. "Looking for us. Punishing anyone who might have helped. We have to warn people. We cannot. If we stop, we die. And if we die, Winston wins." It was brutal logic, but correct. They rode on guilt heavy on their shoulders. That night they made camp in a sheltered hollow. No fire. Too risky. They ate cold jerky and huddled under blankets for warmth. Dakota took first watch. Sam insisted on second, despite Ayanna's protests. Sam kept watch under the stars, rifle ready. His thoughts drifted between past and present, between Sarah's memory and Ayanna's presence. And he thought about the future. If they survived. If they delivered the treaty. If Winston fell. What then? Ayanna said she never wanted to see him again. That when this was over, they were done. Sam understood. He had killed her father. That was not something you forgave and moved past. That was something you carried forever. But a small, traitorous part of him wished it could be different. Near dawn, Ayanna woke and sat beside him. "You should have woken me for your watch," she said. "You needed sleep." "So did you." They sat together as the sky lightened from black to gray to pale blue. "Can I ask you something?" Ayanna said. "Yes." "When you killed my father, did he suffer?" Sam was quiet for a long moment. "No, it was quick." "You are lying." "Yes." "Tell me the truth." Sam looked at her. "He lived long enough to speak, to ask me to protect you, and to say Sarah's name. Then he died. It took maybe 2 minutes. I do not know if that counts as suffering." Ayanna absorbed this. "He spoke of me." "Yes. His last words were about you." Tears slid down her face. "Thank you for telling me. I am sorry it happened. Not sorry I survived, but sorry it had to be him." "I know." They sat in silence as the sun rose. On the third day they reached Fort Benton. The town was larger than Flat Ridge. More buildings, more people, more places to hide, and more places for Winston's men to wait in ambush. Sam and Ayanna approached cautiously. They left the children hidden in a barn on the outskirts with strict instructions to run if anyone came. Then they made their way to the marshal's office. The territorial marshal was a man named Henry Cross, tall, lean, with eyes that missed nothing. Pete had already been there, had told Cross the story, had shown him a copy of the evidence Sam and Ayanna carried. Cross listened to their full account, examined the documents, asked pointed questions. When they finished, he sat back in his chair. "This is enough to arrest Winston Hale, enough to open an investigation. But I need you to testify, both of you." "We will," Sam said. "Good. There is just one problem." "What?" "Hale knows you are coming. He has been here for 2 days, waiting." Sam and Ayanna exchanged looks. "It is a trap," Ayanna said. "Of course it is," Cross replied. "He knows you need me to make your case, so he positions himself where you have to come. Classic strategy." "So, what do we do?" Cross smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "We spring the trap, but on our terms." He explained his plan. It was risky, borderline insane, but it was also their best chance. That evening, Sam and Ayanna walked into the hotel where Winston was staying. Openly, visibly. Finch's remaining men saw them immediately, reported to Winston. Winston met them in the lobby. He looked calm, almost pleased. "Sam, Ayanna, I was beginning to think you would not make it." "We are here," Sam said, "and we have the evidence. The marshal has it now. Your corruption, your crimes, Sarah's murder, all of it." Winston's smile did not waver. "Evidence that will never see a courtroom, because you will both die tonight, and the marshal will have an unfortunate accident before morning. You think you can kill a territorial marshal and get away with it? I have gotten away with far worse." He gestured. Finch's men moved in from all sides, surrounding them. Sam and Ayanna stood back to back. Winston pulled a derringer from his coat. "It has been entertaining, but all games must end." He raised the gun. And then the doors burst open. Marshal Cross entered with 20 armed deputies, all of them pointing rifles at Winston's men. "Winston Hale," Cross said formally, "you are under arrest for murder, fraud, and conspiracy." Winston's face finally showed emotion. Shock. Then rage. "You cannot prove anything." "Actually, I can. Your hired guns gave statements in exchange for leniency. Detailed statements about who paid them, who gave orders, including orders to kill Sarah Bridger and Ayanna here." Winston's hand tightened on the derringer. For a moment Sam thought he would shoot anyway. Go down fighting. But then the old man's shoulders sagged. The gun lowered. "It was all for nothing," Winston said softly. "Sarah threw everything away for Apache who will never appreciate it. And you, Sam, you married my daughter under false pretenses. You were never good enough for her." Sam stepped forward. "You are right. I was not good enough. But I loved her, and she loved me. That is more than you can say. You killed your own daughter to protect your money. You are not a father. You are a monster." Winston's face twisted with fury. He raised the derringer again, but Ayanna was faster. She moved like water, fluid and unstoppable. Her knife flashed in the lamplight. Winston gasped and looked down at the blade buried in his chest. Ayanna met his eyes. "That is for Sarah, and for my father, and for every Apache whose land you stole." She pulled the knife free. Winston collapsed. Blood spread across the expensive carpet. His eyes found Ayanna's face one last time. "You look just like her," he whispered, "just like Sarah." Then he died. The room erupted in chaos. Finch's men tried to fight. The deputies cut them down. It was over in seconds. When the smoke cleared, 6 men lay dead. Winston Hale among them. Marshal Cross looked at Ayanna. That was self-defense. Was it? He raised a weapon. You protected yourself and others. That is the story I will tell. Ayanna nodded slowly. She looked at the blood on her knife, on her hands. She had killed the man who destroyed her family. Should have felt satisfaction. Victory. Instead, she just felt tired. Sam put a hand on her shoulder. "It is over." "Is it?" "The worst part is, the rest will take time. But yes, it is over." Ayanna allowed herself to lean against him. Just for a moment. Just long enough to remember she was not alone. Then she straightened. "My children. I need to get back to them. They are safe. Cross had men watching them." Relief flooded her face. "Thank you." They walked out of the hotel together. Behind them, deputies secured the scene, arrested the survivors, began the long process of justice. 6 months later, the world looked different. The treaty was authenticated. 50,000 acres of Montana land returned to Apache ownership. Not all the tribes, not even most. But it was something. A beginning. Sam's ranch was part of that land. He signed it over without protest. The territorial government offered him compensation. He refused, said it was never his to begin with. Instead, he built a small cabin on the edge of the Apache land, with permission from the council, with Ayanna's blessing. He did not live with her, did not presume that level of closeness, but he lived near enough to help, to be present if needed. Dakota visited him often. The boy was learning to be a bridge between two worlds. Apache by birth, but comfortable with white ways. He would go far, Sam thought, would do great things. Kimmy brought him drawings, little glimpses of her imagination. Sam hung them on his cabin walls and smiled every time he saw them. And Ayanna. She was rebuilding, leading, helping her people navigate the complicated process of reclaiming land and identity. She was magnificent. Sam watched from a distance and felt something he had not felt in years. Hope. One evening, Ayanna knocked on his door. He opened it to find her standing there nervous in a way he had never seen her. "Can I come in?" Of course. She entered and looked around the small cabin, saw the drawings on the wall, the simple furniture, the life he had built in the shadow of his guilt. "I found something," she said, "in the belongings Sarah left with me. Something I think you should see." She handed him a letter, sealed, addressed to Sam in Sarah's handwriting. Sam's hands shook as he broke the seal. The letter was short, written in Sarah's careful script. "My dearest Sam," it began, "if you are reading this, I am gone. And if Ayanna is the one who gave it to you, then my greatest hope has been realized. You have found each other. I know the truth, my love. I have always known. I know you killed Chief Naiche. I discovered it shortly after we married when I saw the bracelet you kept hidden. I recognized the design, knew who it belonged to. I should have been angry, should have left you, but I could not, because I also knew the man you had become, the man who chose peace over violence, who built instead of destroyed, who loved me with a gentleness that proved people can change. I chose to stay, chose to love you, not despite your past, but because your past made you the man I fell in love with, a man who understood loss, who valued life because he had taken it, who would protect the people he loved with everything he had. I have one last request. If you survive me, if Ayanna finds, you do not let guilt destroy what could be. She is strong and brave and deserves happiness, and so do you. Do not hide from life, Sam. Do not hide from love. I know what I am asking is almost impossible. The man who killed her father, the woman whose loss he caused. It seems like the cruelest irony. But Sarah Hale learned to love Sam Bridger despite his past. Maybe Ayanna can learn to love him because of who he has become. Forgive yourself, my darling. I have already forgiven you, and I think in time Ayanna will too. Live, love. Build something good from the ashes of what was lost. That is how you honor my memory. That is how you honor Naiche's memory. Forever yours, Sarah. Sam finished reading. Tears streamed down his face. Ayanna watched him with gentle eyes. "She knew everything," Sam whispered. "Yes. And she forgave me." "She did." Sam looked at Ayanna. "Can you—" Ayanna was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was soft but sure. "I have been angry for 15 years. Angry at the man who killed my father. Angry at the world that allowed it. Angry at myself for surviving when he did not. But anger is exhausting, and I am tired of carrying it." She stepped closer. "You are not the man who killed my father. That man died years ago. You are Sam Bridger, the man who saved my daughter, who risked everything to help me, who gave up his land without being asked, who has spent 6 months building a life in service to people who have every reason to hate him. I do not hate you, Sam. I think I stopped hating you the night you pushed me out of the way of Winston's bullet, maybe even before that. I cannot say I love you, not yet, maybe not ever. The wounds are too deep, the history too complicated. But I can say I want you in my life, in my children's lives, not as a stranger, not as a debt to be repaid, but as someone who matters, someone I choose to keep close." She held out her hand. Sam looked at it, at the offer being made. Not romance, not absolution, just connection, just possibility. He took her hand, and for the first time in 15 years the bracelet that hung on his wall felt less like a burden and more like a reminder. People could change, enemies could become allies, and sometimes, impossibly, wounds could heal. Not completely, never completely, but enough. Enough to keep living, keep building, keep hoping. 1 year later, the cabin Sam built was no longer on the edge of Apache land. It was at the center. He had been adopted by the council, given a name in Apache, made a member of the tribe not by blood, but by choice and service. Dakota called him grandfather. Kimmy called him Sam, with the easy affection of a child who knew no reason not to love him. And Ayanna. She came into his cabin 3 nights a week, They shared meals, talked about the day, made plans for the future. Sometimes she stayed until dawn. Sometimes she left after dinner. Sam never asked for more than she offered, never pushed. But slowly, incrementally, the distance between them shrank. One evening as they sat watching the sunset, Ayanna said something that made Sam's breath catch. "I think Sarah would be proud of us." "You think so?" "I do. We took something broken and made it whole. Not perfect, but whole." Sam nodded. She always said brokenness was just another word for possibility. Ayanna smiled. She was very wise. She was. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun sank below the mountains, and Sam thought about the long road that had led him here. The violence, the grief, the impossible coincidence of saving the daughter of the man he killed. It should have destroyed them both. Instead, it had given them a chance at something neither expected, not redemption. That was too clean a word for the messy reality of their lives, but healing, growth, connection. A family built not from blood or obligation, but from choice. Sam looked at the woman beside him, strong and scarred and beautiful in ways that had nothing to do with appearance. He thought about asking her to marry him, someday, when enough time had passed, when the wounds were scars instead of open injuries. But for now, this was enough. Sitting together, building something good, honoring Sarah, honoring Nietzsche, honoring the people they had been and the people they were becoming. The sun disappeared, stars emerged, and Sam Bridger, for the first time in his life, felt at peace. Not because he had earned it, but because someone had chosen to give it to him anyway, and that he knew was grace.